We're live.
We're live again.
Law 48 from the 48 Laws of Power.
The last law. It's exciting. It's exciting today because it's the last law. So we actually finished a book.
Yep.
And at the end of the podcast, we're going to say which book we're going to do next. And it's also exciting because this weekend, which is April of 2024, we surpassed 1,000 subscribers. And that was very exciting. And that was last Saturday, which is 2 days ago.
Yep.
So we're over 1,000 subscribers and growing, and it's a lot of fun. And one of the things that I can say very quickly, and we'll get into the law, is that the journey to get here, not only has it been fun, but it actually has changed us. The people that are commenting, giving us ideas on how to improve, telling us that they like it, telling us what they don't like, having people in other countries look at what we have, it really humbles you. So the growth that we have achieved internally as persons, as human beings, is not be able to measure. And it's very fulfilling. I
Yeah.
understand now why so many people are doing this kind of work.
Yeah. I second that.
All right. So we
Cool.
got to over 1,000 subscribers this week.
And this law, let's read it. Law 48 is assume formlessness.
Yes.
Okay. By taking a shape, by having a visible plan, you open yourself to attack. Instead of taking a form for your enemy to grasp, keep yourself adaptable and on the move. Accept the fact that nothing is certain and no law is fixed. The best way to protect yourself is to be as fluid and formless as water. Never bet on stability or lasting order. Everything changes. Law 48, assume formlessness. And Robert Greene, in my opinion, picked the perfect law to wrap up the 48 laws of power. Because this law is about using all of the laws and knowing when. And we've said it multiple times that the laws seem to contradict themselves.
Some of them do, yeah.
Some of them do. And if you're reading this as like a how-to guide in terms of like, the law says to do this. The problem with that is you become rigid. And what I like about Law 48 is that he says no law is fixed. You have to adapt to the situation and change. And it's a really, really, I think, great law that wraps everything up.
It's great.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, I think I have seen a video where they're interviewing Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
I think it's a black and white video. So I don't know if it was the format or not, but I know
No,
that
it's black and white. I've
that
seen
video
it.
is old. And, he says right there, be like water, my friend, be like water,
Yeah.
and then he goes on to explain if you put water in a teacup, and this and that.
It becomes the shape of the teacup.
Right. And
It can
so
crash, it can flow.
it's got tremendous power.
Yeah.
It also can be smooth, but even on the smoothness of it over a number of years, it can create the Grand Canyon. So, the power of water.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. But Bruce Lee had talked about it way before Robert Greene.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So it doesn't take anything away from Robert Greene because what Robert Greene has done is compiled it. The level of research that he performs is absolutely insane. And then he packages for you.
Yeah.
And then at the end, he tells you, hey, be flexible. Try to learn when you can use it, when you can't. And most importantly, try to figure out when they're using it on you. When people are using these laws on you to manipulate you
Yeah.
and try to make you go into an area or a location or something in business, in life, in marriage, in with your relationship with your children's, whatever the case may be, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest takeaways is no people are using these laws on you. Um, in this law, he says by having a visible plan, you open yourself to attack, which is interesting because, um, let's say, as a business person, we many times, or I have, to in terms of like leading a team members, employees, and so you want to cast some sort of vision, you want to set some sort of goals and plan of
Correct.
action.
Correct.
But for somebody who's trying to take you out, they can look at that and say, "Oh, this guy is set and structured." And if you don't put maybe it's little not escapes, but like buffers that allow you to adapt that plan, and you're super rigid on it, that could become a problem. Um, I was thinking, I always try to think, where have I seen this take place in my life? Who has used Law 48? Bruce Lee was a great example, right? He's saying in life. But it was hard for me to think of a person that I've seen, let's say, use this law that I know personally. But Robert Greene brought up Mao Zedong,
Mm-hmm.
which was the communist
Leader, yeah.
leader in China. And so in doing that research, I thought, pretty close to home personal was Fidel Castro because
Oh yeah.
he comes into Cuba, which is where you were born
Right.
and where my grandparents, your mom, your dad,
Mm-hmm.
aunt, uncle, you have family there. We have family, and a guy like Fidel Castro comes in, and I think used this law to the T because from guerrilla tactics in the Sierra Maestra to him coming in and finding allies, whether with Russia, coming to the United States, evading the fact that for many years that he was a socialist, communist, right? He was pretending he was something else initially. Uh, the guy was slippery, and it's said that he even would move every couple weeks. He had these bulletproof caravans. You know, I think that Fidel Castro, along with Mao Zedong, and Robert Greene uses Mao Zedong because the example is that he didn't have like while he was gathering his armies, he didn't have any sort of like structure to them. They would invade an area, a town,
Uh-huh.
and then they would leave that town, and then it would get taken back by the Manchurians, I believe it was.
Okay.
Um, and um, they underestimated Mao Zedong, and so Manchuria.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would just leave that town, and so they thought, oh, this guy was maybe like like a scholar, a poet. He wasn't really a threat until he became a threat, and he was playing a long game. And
Right.
the same thing with Fidel Castro. He was put in jail in Island of Pines, and then he was released. He was sentenced, I think, to 15 years or something. Then he was released, and then takes off to Mexico. And it's said that he, over a pretty short amount of time, um, had gathered a huge. He was an orator. He had that gift
Yeah.
that he could speak. So it's tough because growing up in I'm half Cuban, half Mexican, right? There was this realization that even though Fidel Castro destroyed so many lives, as did Mao Zedong, he also was extremely gifted in his ability to maintain power all of those years since 1959.
No kidding.
And then his brother is still, the Castro regime is still in power, you could say, to a certain extent,
Mm-hmm.
even though he died and his brother's still alive, I believe, Raul Castro. But, anyways, I just brought that up because it's close to home because you got kicked out of, as a young boy,
Oh yeah. That's a kid.
as a kid, and you suffered the consequences as somebody that I think really personified this law. He was a master. persuader, orator, slippery. You couldn't catch him.
Slippery.
How
No,
many
you couldn't
attempts to
catch.
kill him?
Oh, I would say hundreds, hundreds. And that's because the countrymen know about this. You know, this is not on the books. You read it on the books, maybe there's CIA attempts, maybe six, seven attempts, but there were hundreds of attempts to get rid of this guy, and they couldn't. He was just not one step ahead, but several.
Yeah,
You know, he was sharp, he was smart.
yeah,
You know, it's like Robert Greene says, some people do not need to read the book. You know, they're born with this instinctiveness of, I'm not going to say malice, but this wisdom of understanding human nature and how people are going to react. And you see a lot of these qualities in great leaders.
yeah.
Um, I was reading an article over the weekend, and I'm not quite sure how it applies to this, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway, because you reminded me of it as you were speaking right
Mm-hmm.
now. And it was on Alexander the Great
Mm.
has a quote out there of, I guess, really renowned quote, but I just found out about it over the weekend reading an article. And apparently, Alexander the Great said, I'm not afraid of a man, I'm not afraid of a garrison of lions that is being led by a sheep. What I am afraid of is a garrison of sheep that is being led by a lion. Okay? So you see the contrast?
Yeah.
And really, you know, if you break it down, it takes one person that has charisma, energy, the gift of talk, like Castro did. You know, he was an orator, like you say. And when you look at these guys that have led masses, whether for good or for bad, they have these characteristics. Mao Zedong had it,
Yeah.
Alexander had it, Castro has it, Hitler had it. You know, they were charismatic.
Right.
And when they spoke, the energy that came off their bodies embraced and entangled people,
Yeah.
you know? Because I'll tell you, I know in my instincts that Castro was not a good man,
Right.
but I have heard videos on him, and, you know, he was so smooth that, you know, even me, every now and then I go, whoa, wait a minute. What?
Your
What?
interviews.
Yeah,
Interviews.
interviews.
Yeah.
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 And, you know, he's just playing the cards that are being dealt at that
He's
moment.
playing chess.
Yeah, he's playing the cards. And there's something to be said about losing the battle to win the war. You know, there's something to be said about that. Losing the battle to win the war.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
it's interesting.
I think like you said, some people develop that skill. Maybe some people have it, they're born with this communication skills. They can read people. But with this law, because
And
I
let us not forget about Putin.
yeah, 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 all these I mean, I'm trying to think, is there somebody good who's used it for good? This formlessness idea.
Jesus,
Yeah, maybe.
Jesus,
Um,
or, you know,
but you can't.
whoever prophet you follow.
This law is about being hard to catch. Sometimes we've met people and I'm like, man, that guy is slippery. And maybe that has a negative connotation. When you say, oh, somebody's slippery. But
You know who you remind me of right now?
uh
The boxer. Um,
oh, uh starts with the name.
yeah, he's got
Money Mayweather.
Mayweather.
Mayweather. Floyd
He's
Mayweather.
got, you can't touch him in the
In the
ring.
ring. Yeah.
I mean, there's a fight that he's fighting Canelo, and he whacks Canelo left and right, and Canelo tries, and he's just like, yeah, half an inch away, less than that, but the punch doesn't reach him, and when it does reach him, he just moves to the left or moves to, he's slippery as all get go.
Yeah. And there's people like that in life.
Yeah,
They're dodging
the
things.
bullets.
Yeah, the bullets in life. And you can spot these people because we also we've studied the laws and many other books, and you do your own. You've lived a life of 65 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're 65.
I'm 65.
And me 33 years, and so we bring to the table a different experience. However, we've met people like that, and they I think practice this law, because you can't be too rigid in life. If you're
No,
too set, this law is about recreating yourself. This law is about, which is law 25.
correct.
It's about law 20, don't commit. It's about knowing who the master is. Law 1, don't outshine the master. It's bringing all of these laws together, and you become very dangerous, because you can recognize when somebody is like that too. But I know we've met people, and we leave that conversation, I'm like, that guy is slippery. You can't catch him on one.
No, you can't. You can't catch them. And nowadays, to be successful in business, um, well, first of all, I'm a big proponent of jumping in the pool. Okay, you gotta jump
Sink or
in,
swim.
sink or swim. Because you can read books until you're red in the face,
Yeah,
but until you get into it, because okay, the there's a lot to be learned about books. And books, I know that what's the name of that kid that started in the garage with his Ferraris? What's his name?
I don't remember his name.
The Puerto Rican guy.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I don't
Uh,
remember his name.
okay, anyway, he's one of the first that came out. He's a big social media guy. He's one of the first that came out with his Ferrari in the garage and said, "Love, the Ferrari is good. Ty Lopez."
Oh yeah.
But he had a bunch of books, and he said the books are what's giving me the okay. So you know there's a lot to be said about books that are written and so forth, and you learn from that, because even Ty said, here's the opportunity to learn from somebody else's mistakes, and they've put it down on paper, or somebody else's triumphs, and they've put it down on paper. So there's no substitute for reading and engulfing your mind with new ideas and so forth. And where are you going to get the ideas? Well, you're going to get them from books, potentially,
Yeah.
and other places, but books. Okay. So that's a given. However, being in the arena, being in the game, and being involved in the fight, in other words, starting a business and going through the steps of trying to make that business successful today, good luck. It's going to take everything you got.
Yeah.
you know, all the energy you got, all the creativity you got, all the laws of human nature, all the daily laws, all the 40, because you're going to have to sit down at every level.
And what you're saying is that you have to put what you read into practice. It
Correct.
comes to a point where it's even like in medical school, you do a ton of learning, but you
And
have
when
to
you
do
come
your
out, you know
residency.
nothing.
Right, but you have to do the hands-on, right? The residency, or an internship or an apprenticeship, right, in different industries. You have to do the hands-on.
You got to, because look, you can read till you're blue and red in the face on how to start an IV, let's say. Okay? You've got it all down. You've read everything. You've memorized everything. And then you come to your first patient. Okay? And
And they're
then
squirmy.
you put the
The band,
tourniquet,
the tourniquet.
okay, and then you see the vein popped up, and now what do you do now? You're it could be a vein that moves a lot. It could be a vein that's in, a little bit further to the left, a little bit further to the right, or maybe a vein that doesn't have the strength because it's an older patient. So you need to be careful how you pierce it, and you
Yeah.
need, you need the touch. You need the
Yeah,
sensitivity.
that's an
You
interesting
need the
point.
practice. You need the touch. Surgeons can, it's just like feeling a pulse. Some people have a pulse that you can barely feel. And you gotta just, and sometimes you even have to close your eyes
Yeah.
to try to block out everything else and wait a minute, where is that pulse? Is it here or in the neck or your pedal pulse? So, what I'm trying to say is you can read a book on starting businesses and so forth, but you're never going to get the true grit of it until you actually go ahead and start it.
Yeah.
And let me ask you a question. Let me put you on the spot.
Okay.
What do you think stops people from starting a business or going in a direction in life?
Fear.
That's it. Fear, folks.
Yeah.
Fear.
The unknown, failure.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those things are rejection.
If you can get over the fear,
You know, I
then go for it.
if you can embrace rejection,
It's tough.
it's hard. But I think that it's necessary.
It's necessary
It's
because
like
it
sorry, go ahead.
it's like I say, it builds character.
Yeah.
You
I
know.
was sharing with you that I was watching Jorge Masvidal interview.
Uh-huh.
He says it's super necessary, super necessary. He's like, after you need Ben Askren in the and you knocked him out unconscious, did you have to hit him two more times? They ask him, or did you have to
Oh
hit
yeah,
pound on
yeah.
his head while he was on the ground? He says it was super necessary. Jesus, because he says that I go until the it's like till it gets called off. And in soccer, they would tell us you play the whistle. The ball can roll out of bounds, but if the ref doesn't see it,
Oh my
you
goodness.
don't stop and be like, "Oh, the ball went out of bounds." No, you keep playing, and if the ref doesn't catch it, then you keep going. You play the whistle. If you foul somebody or whatever the case, you just keep going. Um, Nothing is certain. No law is fixed. The best way to protect yourself is to be as fluid and formless as water and never bet on stability or lasting order. One thing that Robert Greene mentions is that as we age, we become more complacent. We become more reliant on stability and less open to change. So let me ask you, at 65, how do you continue to be open to the idea of change?
So I read a book a long time ago um, that gave an example of, I think it was an executive at MGM Grant, and he was located in Vegas. I believe I'm right on this. You guys do your research, but I'm almost certain of this. And the man was 98 years old and still going at it and negotiating and sitting at the table with the big shots. And he was in his 90s and he would show up, with a suit and a tie. And I've let go of the suit and tie. But I remember that when I was like 10 years in business or something like that. And I thought, I like that idea. I'd like to be like that. I want to stay in the game as long as I possibly can, as long as I have my wits about me. And you need your wits because you need to be sharp. You need to be able to, see an opportunity where other people's may not. And that's what creates, your path.
So part of it is wanting to stay sharp.
Wanting to stay sharp. And the other is like, for example, I did something I've never done before. I started a metal fabrication course. And I had second thoughts in the beginning, but I thought, let's live the laws. And I did it. And we're more than halfway through it. And I love it. And I've learned so much. I'm still an amateur no matter what, but I've learned so much that I didn't know before. And it's leading me in different paths.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've read articles, scientific articles before where they say, if you try to learn something new, your brain creates new pathways. So it's not just your attitude and your mentality, it also takes on a physical form. And so let's say you try to sit down and learn the piano, okay? Learning the piano at age 50 or something like that is not necessarily an easy task, okay? You have to have discipline, sit down. But if you get through the beginning stages, which should be the most difficult, then you also see that you get better. That will motivate and stimulate you. But you start from what this article was saying is new neural pathways. You because you're learning something new, your brain has to adjust to this new knowledge that is getting, and it's creating, let's say, more circulation, more pathways, and so forth. So
Interesting.
yeah, it's helping you stay.
Physiologically, you're changing
You're
as
changing
well.
physiologically,
Yeah.
whether you perceive it or not.
Yeah.
And you guys can do your own research. You know, you
So,
can learn. In fact, I've read that a young child learning a language, okay, at an early age, gives that child an advantage over those that don't know more than one language.
sure. Sure.
It creates different neural pathways.
Absolutely. I mean,
And so,
so would you say, and I want to talk about that, would you say though your motivation then, what would it be? Is it fear that you will lose that mental
acuity.
acuity? Is that,
Yes.
would you say fear is the
Yeah.
motivation?
Yeah.
Yeah, fear is a huge motivator.
I want to stay sharp. And by the way, that goes to everything.
So,
Physical also. Physical.
so
I,
that,
I started weightlifting, which
yeah.
I haven't done, in years. I mean, the last time I lifted weights was in high school.
So,
And so
so fear is what's motivating you to continue to change and learn and be open to it, because there's a lot of people, but we do that where we say, oh, most people at your age are retired and this and that. Yeah, but
I don't want to retire.
yeah, you don't want to sit down and
No.
just chill and plant your garden. Not that that's uh
Hey, if that's your thing,
if
God
that's your
bless
thing,
you.
but that's not you.
No, I don't want to retire.
Yeah. And I gotta tell you, I think that we're sold a certain picture. Society sells a certain picture of retirement, golden years, and all these things. You see the gray-haired people, and they're just sitting down, and
Gray hair people,
the
right here.
it doesn't sell you the picture of the gray-haired man who's extremely fit, who's running a business, who is learning new things, physically strong. It doesn't sell you that the golden years that if you Google it, you probably find old people sitting on a couch with a grandchild. So I just find it interesting because you're doing the opposite. You're doing what Law 48 is, what Robert Greene is preaching, which is you know to avoid becoming rigid and uh reluctant to change.
The fear, what motivates me is that I want to stay mentally sharp.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, okay, so as you get older, so this goes for everybody, no matter what age you have. As you get older, your capabilities in certain areas begin to diminish, and you're able to a certain extent perceive some of that. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like the idea, well, you don't see yourself age because you look yourself in the mirror every day. And every day you're looking at yourself in the mirror. But if
Hmm.
you take a picture that you took when you were in your 20s and then you compare it to a picture that you took when you're in your 60s,
Or just 2 years ago, 3 years ago,
yeah,
you can see a lot of change.
right. But when you're looking in the mirror, since you look in the mirror every day,
Yeah.
you don't see the gradual minuscule changes that take about. And we're talking physical now. What about
Right.
physiological? Okay,
Mental.
mental. So, what I want to do is stay mentally active
Yeah.
so that I can still be sharp in those decisions.
Yeah.
Um, and the goal that motivates me, and I was sharing this with a gentleman that we were talking about. He put up his building for sale, and he has started another business which seems to be taking off and so forth. But we were talking with him because um, it's very difficult to make that change, okay? And you second guess yourself
Like a career change.
for sure,
Yeah.
for
Or
sure.
relationship change.
Relationship.
Anything.
I was reading about a guy that just got his law degree, and I think he's 70 or 71, and he just got his law degree.
Yeah.
So, what motivates people to do that at that age? For me, I want to stay active because I'm afraid of losing my mental acuity,
Right.
you know? And it all goes into what you eat, how much activity you do. If you're,
Yeah.
because when you're 65, you look at life a little bit different, Mike.
Yeah. Well,
We don't
yeah.
have any guarantees,
No
God
guarantees.
forbid, you know,
But you're
but
right. You when you're in your 30s, like I am, you think I have a lot of years ahead. I'm
that's
not
right.
thinking how many years. And you and I've been in business. This is, we're in business together now, but about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we were in business together then. And then there was a gap of 12 years where we did our own businesses.
Yeah.
Well,
12 or 10.
yeah, when we, when we would come across an opportunity, we would meet somebody, you would say, call this guy. And I would say, oh, yeah, yeah, I'll call him tomorrow. Let's say it was somebody that we could make business with, do business with. And oh, yeah, I'll call him tomorrow. And you would say, I don't have tomorrow. I don't know that I'm going to have tomorrow. And so you had this urgency that I didn't have in my 20s or I was 19 actually. And it took me a while to develop that urgency. Many things can kick on that urgency. Some people could say, you buy an expensive car, or you buy a house, or you get married, or you have a child, and those things all of a sudden they kick on the gear that maybe you didn't have. But it was just interesting because the contrast, I thought I had tomorrow, and you thought, I don't know if tomorrow is guaranteed. I need to call the guy today. So I think if we had that urgency early on, you also had that urgency. You came here, as an immigrant, and you had elderly parents and an aunt and uncle that you had to take care of. So maybe that kicks on also another form of urgency. You're an only child. So, the people that are born into a comfort, maybe we're born in this country with a social security and a good environment. Uh, there's a lot of comfort there and very little urgency.
Well,
So,
the truth of the matter is, and this is for all our viewers, is that there isn't much growth happening in a comfort zone.
no.
When you step out of your comfort zone and you're not feeling it all that, that's when you grow,
Yeah.
because you have to figure out a way to continue moving forward. There's no way out of that one. So
Yes.
if you stay in your comfort zone, your growth will be minimal, I think.
The challenge is that what Robert Greene talks about in this law is that when you're young, it's very easy to be that revolutionary, new ideas, change the game, change the industry when you're young, you know, like Mao Zedong when he first came into this idea, I want to change the country.
Right.
When Fidel Castro, he was a young guy who grew up from a wealthy family, Spaniards, and thought, I want to change things. There's corruption, this and that. So what he's saying is that when you're young, it's easy to have that mentality. As you age, it becomes more difficult. And so you need to do things like you're doing. You're forcing yourself into uncomfortable situations. But how many people, not many people do that, I think.
Well, I think that, well, you know, uh, I'm not special, okay? I'm not special. This is just personal convictions. Everybody can do it. You know, it's not easy and it's slightly difficult. But I want to talk about the grandparents because the law, in reviewing the law and doing research, it took
Mm-hmm.
me to the area of the grandparents. And what he was saying was, your grandparents, they're grandparents today, and they're set in their ways today. But at one point, they were young
Mm-hmm.
and they were the innovators, and they were the ones that were getting ready to make the changes.
Right.
So, as you get older, you get set in your ways. And that's one of the things that you just mentioned.
You
And
have
he
to
brought
fight
up
that.
the grandparents,
Yeah.
right? The other thing that I want to put you on the spot, I love putting you on the spot because you don't know what I'm going to throw at you. And that's the beauty, I think, of our interchange in our podcast because it's raw.
Yeah.
It's
No
not
edits.
no edits, and you haven't had a chance to practice anything. You're throwing it out there. So, the law is saying be fluid, like water, get ready to change and whatever. But my question to you would be, what about tradition? What about our traditions? Everybody's got them. You look, the Arabs have them, the Iranians have it, the Cubans have, the Spaniards, the English. We have traditions, whether it's to foods or culture, whatever. How do you deal with the traditions when you're trying to implement this
Change?
change?
That's a good question
Okay, so answer
because,
it.
well, I personally believe in traditions.
Okay.
I like the idea of traditions. I think that it's part of our identity, certain traditions. It
Okay.
makes us who we are. And some people maybe don't know really where they come from or who they are because there were no traditions that were passed down to them. Good traditions, right? But I do think that those traditions naturally do change over time. Even if you try to keep certain traditions alive, they change, they adapt because of the environment that you're in. So, for example, like one tradition you like is to get the family together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, well,
It's hard. It's a
you know,
task.
it's very difficult. Yeah, and I understand why you want to do that because unity is a big part of what you believe in, right? And mom. However, yeah, I think that the traditions will naturally change. I'm trying to think of like a going to, let's say, our roots, like the
Cafecito. You're like
well,
Cuban
I'm
coffee.
I'm thinking like our roots of, let's say, Cuba, right? A lot of the traditions came because of the African influence in Cuba.
Right.
So the Africans are there as slaves initially, and then you have the Spaniards who had colonized Cuba. Then you begin to get a mix of culture and traditions. And now all of a sudden, the people that are growing up in this new environment are actually getting the kids of the Spanish are also getting influence of the African descent, the African culture, the music, and then you have the birth of something like salsa, which comes from the percussion comes from the African influence, and then you have the uh, the singing over it and the rhythms and all that stuff. So I think that just naturally traditions and culture is going to change, and I think that's a good thing. Whether there's certain things that you want to live by, principles and traditions that are you want to be rigid on, I think you might find yourself getting very frustrated.
Well, I think that some of our viewers would disagree with you
Yeah,
because
I'm
I
sure.
think that tradition is the roots to try to keep uh, a hold on the past because that's the whole idea that traditions get passed down.
Yeah.
I'm not, hear me out because I see your face, but so tradition, this particular research that I did
Hmm.
said that tradition hits head on against trying to be formed into the formlessness
Yeah.
because you're holding on to the traditions, so that's not a situation of adaptation.
Mm-mm.
That's you, this is the tradition, this is what it is, but you're trying to adapt to different circumstances, so do you break the traditions, you say. And I think that's where you might be right to a certain extent in the that
It
it
evolves.
evolves because you can pass the traditions down, but only to the extent that the new situations arise, something like that.
Yeah.
It's
I think
but
that makes sense to me. Yeah, if you're too rigid, you become that old person And you don't have to be an old person. You could be a
No.
young person with an old mentality kind of thing that is set in their ways and nope, my tradition is that this is the way things are done, and then you become a isolated from the world because you want to live your life like this tradition and culture and blah blah blah. And so that's not good in my opinion because we are social creatures, and we need interaction, and we have to be open to the idea that maybe traditions are just going to evolve. I think evolve is the right word.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my take on it. um
Yeah, because it said right here, usually the folks that are 50 years old and older are usually, and the word he used was stuck in their ways.
yeah, yeah.
They become, according to him, I'm not saying that this is a fact for everybody, but they say they become stagnant.
There are certain principles
Mhm.
that I do think can carry on, right? I mean, you could even look at, like, let's say something like the 10 commandments. It stands, I don't know every single commandment. Maybe I should, but some of these commandments just stand, thou shalt not steal, right? That those
Mhm.
are principles that I think anybody, you live by that code, and that's kind of timeless principles. So maybe there are some traditions that are timeless. They just kind of stand. But I think overall things evolve. Another thing about this law is that he says to never show defensiveness and don't take anything personally,
Right.
which that's something, we talk about all the time. The Four Agreements by Don
Correct.
Miguel Ruiz,
Right.
and which is another book, and which is, he says, don't take anything personally. That's one of the four agreements. Um, don't show people, that defensiveness. You're showing somebody you have a weakness there. And part of this law is not allowing people to use that to their advantage. Did you want to throw something else in there? I thought an interesting point that Robert Greene says is look for the elites that have been able to embody this formlessness and generational existence and, let's say, wealth. Their power comes from the rapidity with which they can change.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because sometimes, like, you think of like a big ship, right? And the whole idea is that that big ship takes, for it to make change, takes a long time, right? Because it's a huge ship. But for the elites,
Sorry.
they have existed in this idea. They know they need to change, and they're very quick at it. And that's what allows them to stay at that elite level or on top.
Yeah. You reminded me right now of Tiger Woods, that he had, everybody thinks of Tiger Woods, he's one of the best golfers in the world ever, right? But apparently he took like a year hiatus, or it took him a year to unlearn a particular type of swing and learn another type of swing.
Oh, wow.
And this is a guy that's at the top of his game. And for him to take that amount of time, I think it was close to a year, and do something like this, it shows the level of commitment and the level of be like water, because he realized, you know what, I'm good this way, but this is not the proper way of doing it. But I've got muscle memory and I've got brain memory and I've got this. My swing keeps going back into the same format, which I know that is not the best. So I have to learn this new thing. I have to unlearn this. Can you imagine how hard that might be
Kudos to him for
for
recognizing that. Yeah.
recognizing that? And then learn another way. And he's still up there.
Yeah.
He's still one of the best golfers ever.
Yes.
And he's up there in age too, I think.
Yeah, I'm
I
not
don't
sure.
know. Now you've got I don't know much about it,
He
but I
seems
get you got,
physically in shape. I saw a
he
picture of him
does.
the
You
other day.
have the seniors and
Yeah.
the golf tournament. At one point he's going to fall into the sea. Yeah, because
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Someone even at that level willing to work on something like that. And
exactly.
and I think that's something that maybe part of this law is also like we have to keep an element of humility and realize that we've got a lot of imperfections
Sure.
and we need to be open to unlearn, learn again, change. Um,
Yeah, the same things that made a corporation successful
yep,
20 years ago
yep.
will not be the same things that make a corporation successful today.
No,
No doubt about it.
and if you don't adapt and change and be formless, you become the blockbuster that got killed by Netflix.
Right.
You
And
know,
did you know that Netflix at one point wanted to sell and they went to see Blockbuster and apparently Blockbuster laughed at them
wow.
because they wanted, I think, 50 million or something like that because they were hurting. And then this is an affirmation from the CEO. He said, yeah, we came back to our headquarters. And when we got turned down by Blockbuster, um, we knew at that moment there was no other way out. So we just had to tunnel through. And look where they are today. And Blockbuster is not in existence today.
And look at how they've changed because Netflix used to be DVDs to your home,
Right.
unlimited DVDs a month. And we had a neighbor, remember? And she always had a new Netflix movie that, yeah, they would get it, and then like literally every other day
Right,
they
right.
would turn it in and get a new movie. But it used to be DVDs, and I think that became it was not profitable or no longer profitable. They were shipping all these
Oof.
DVDs by mail constant. I remember seeing a documentary on them, and you could see all the DVDs going through like their uh,
Yeah,
assembly line
yeah,
kind of
assembly
thing
line got it.
to be shipped out. And then Redbox, look at Redbox. That was one thing that didn't last too long, it seems. Maybe they're still around,
They're
but
still around,
but
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 not like
now it's
before.
streaming. Everything is streaming.
It's streaming.
But if you would have told people 10 years ago that everything would be streaming, every movie that you
Watch,
watch.
it's amazing. It's crazy.
Yeah. So I think that um bless you.
Excuse me.
I think that these laws uh, have changed me.
Oh,
I think for the better. And like you said earlier, by reviewing these and going through each law individually, it forced us to learn, get uncomfortable, revisit some of these things and our experiences. And I'm looking forward to the next um,
so
series that we.
what are we gonna do next? Because this is our last law.
I think we should announce it in a separate.
Oh, okay.
Let's announce it in a separate video.
Okay.
If you're cool with that,
I'm cool with that.
we have to adapt.
I wanted to announce it here, but you don't want to, so I'm adapting to your idea.
Let's do
There
it.
you go. I'm being like water.
But anything else you wanted to throw in on this law?
No, I just want to thank everybody, all their comments. It's really been motivating.
Yeah.
It's been a very exciting weekend to break, 1,000 and go beyond 1,000. And, now the goal is 10,000, 100,000. But it's changed us with the level of research that you have to do. And keep in mind, you know, um, we also have a job. We're fully committed to our real estate and our investments and our clients and so forth. But
But this is fun,
this
and
is fun.
we don't look at this as a job or anything. I think we do this because we really enjoy it, and the hope is
Correct.
that we can continue to, and that comes off on the to the viewers,
To the viewers.
and
As
that
long as we bring value, we'll
that's it.
continue to grow. And
And the only way to bring value is to continue to improve and learn. So it forces us to do something and get uncomfortable and keep growing as well.
and it's interesting because I saw one of the first videos we did, and then I compared it to one of the last ones that we've done, and they're quite different.
Oh yeah.
I'll just say that if you guys want to check it out.
Yeah,
There's been a lot of growth, but the
definitely.
internally, I think going through these things and and try to apply the laws to the different experiences that we've had in businesses, because we've had several, you
Yeah.
know, we can share something that may be of value to other people out there. And I love it when we get the comments that we do. In fact, we have inspired several people to start their own podcast, you know?
Yeah.
And so, anyway, it's been great. Thank you very much. And we'll continue to do it.
And remember that everything changes.
Everything changes.
Be formless.
Be formless.
Thank you.